Eric, accused of losing control, then covering up the facts. How dangerous could it be if the CIA did indeed leave these vulnerabilities open for others to find as well?
Well, what we're saying is vulnerabilities, but the real name for these things is weapons. It's one thing to release the tools if you're WikiLeaks, but when you release the actual vulnerabilities, those can be weaponized because we've seen that within 24 hours of discovering a new vulnerability, especially if it's spread mass around the world, then attackers will use that vulnerability. And 99% of the major breaches that have happened because of an unpatched vulnerability. So if WikiLeaks actually wants to be responsible for once, then they need to take great care in how they release these vulnerabilities.
Nafeesa, in fact, the FBI are now looking into how WikiLeaks came across this sort of information.
Right. WikiLeaks has told us that this trove of code and malware and viruses and 0 days or security vulnerabilities was circulating for a long time among government hackers and contractors. And they say one of those people handed that content over to WikiLeaks. So the question is, who would that have been? If the FBI and internally CIA is going to be, making lists of who those people are and trying to find who that one, person was that turned over this content. So that's something we're going to have to wait and see if this is going to be happening, kind of, investigations into this.
I mean, Eric, you mentioned if WikiLeaks was going to be responsible for once, it should have been careful how it put out these so-called weapons and indeed letting the tools be known. But surely should the CIA should have been just as responsible?
Well, the CIA is responsible for conducting espionage and for gathering information all over the world in order to protect the counterintelligence of the U.S., to protect us here. So, there is a national security reason to protect the information and to be able to use these tools, because espionage today isn't conducted by sneaking into buildings and stealing files. It's conducted through cyber attacks. And so there is an offensive capability that every single nation uses, and this was the CIA's. And I do agree that there's a problem when the CIA loses the information.
Yeah, Nafeesa, what's it like on the ground? What is the reporters all saying? What indeed are people all saying within government and within the White House about how the CIA should potentially have reacted and acted?
Well, we haven't had any confirmation that this content is actually, verifiable, that this is actually from the CIA. So no one has quite said that yet. We heard Sean Spicer, the White House, saying this is very, very serious, even though at one point during the campaign we did hear, we've heard President Donald Trump previously said that he loves WikiLeaks. So, kind of backstepping a little bit from those kinds of previous comments. But we've also seen, for instance, the fact that on the Hill, we've heard from John McCain saying this is extremely serious. We need to look into this. How did this get out? This puts American lives at risk. Could be that sources and methods are, now disclosed. So you have, on the one hand, some discomfort around how did this get out from the CIA, but also will this now compromise U.S. ability to gather intelligence and information as well?
And Eric, I've got to put to you, of course, this is a strained relationship we've seen between the tech giants and Washington at times. I mean, our minds go back to the San Bernardino shooting and the fact that they don't like to allow backdoors into their encryption. How do you think this puts the onus on the relationship going forward?
I think that government needs to make some very strong national security decisions about what they need to provide to tech companies. Here, if indeed the CIA did lose this information and they knew that it had proliferated and certain hackers were using it, I would have liked to see an earlier disclosure and maybe work with tech companies to help strengthen our defense, because that is security. Protecting the people here in the U.S. Is national security, especially something so important as a cell phone and our data, which is where we put everything that we do and say these days.